Sorry, real quick. So it's, I mean, perhaps the origins of the Thanksgiving thing are a little questionable. I'm not sure of the history exactly. But if we just think of it as a time to give thanks, to give gratitude, what a wonderful thing. This is actually how we want to wake up every day, giving our thanks for all that we have. Giving thanks for all the beauty in others, all the gifts that we receive in so many different ways from others, beginning with the Lord and with our divine guardians and with our spiritual God family, and down to everyone who's giving something to us in one way or another. So it's a wonderful reminder for all of us. So a few things. Ramananda Prabhu brought up a couple points. He wanted me to say something on the difference between our Bhagavad Gita and ISKCON's Bhagavad Gita. And I would say the main difference really is that Swami Maharaj Prabhupada is very accommodating in his edition, and he's presenting it for persons who don't have any understanding of these teachings at all, and he's explaining point by point, everything, giving a lot of context, a lot of history, explaining the ABCs of Krishna consciousness. Whereas our Bhagavad Gita, it's assuming that you already have a good foundation. And you'll see in our edition, there's very few purports. And there are only purports when there's some particularly special, outstanding point, that's being made that Śrīla Maharaj wants to share. So I would say that's the main difference. And I think it's helpful for someone to read both, side by side. There are other things that can be said, but perhaps for another time. I mean, actually, one thing that's a little unfortunate is our English Gita. In some ways it's more precious, but in other ways it's missing some of the things in our Bengali Gita. We have our Bengali Gita that was made by our Gurudev with some guidance from Śrīla Maharaj. And then we also have our English edition, which was made by a Western sannyasi, Sripad Sagar Maharaj. And they're actually different texts. And our English edition is special because it includes some of Śrīla Maharaj's explanations of some of the Chatur Shloki and one or two other places, the 4 principal verses of Gita. And they're taken from Śrīla Maharaj's English talks, right? And so those are very special. But then what we're missing, one thing that I noticed is that our Bengali Gita, it includes some very special explanations in the word for word, which we don't have in our English. For whatever reason, they were left out. So one day it would be nice to, bring the two together if there's some qualified person who could do that. And Gurudev also mentioned something about, 2 of our principal Vaishnava commentators are Baladev Vijayabhushan and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And I recall Gurudev making some point that Srila Prabhupada drew more upon Baladev Vijayabhushan's commentary, whereas in Srila Maharaj's edition, he drew more upon Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. And those are both also nice commentaries for devotees to go through. In fact, perhaps I have them somewhere. Maybe I could bring them out and go through some parts during our meetings. And there was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember now. But yeah, and another point that our Gurudev made is, it is kind of an interesting point. Like Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he kind of emphasizes, I'm giving Bhagavad Gita as it is, right? Like indicating like it's a fully neutral presentation. Whether or not that's completely true, I don't know. Perhaps there's some bias on the bhakti side. but he presents it like that, as it is. Whereas in our edition, in Srila Maharaj's editions, it's kind of just like unabashedly on the bhakti side. The subtitle is The Hidden Treasure of Devotion. And our Guru Dev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he was actually talking about this one day, and he was giving some examples from the word for word, like where Srila Maharaj was like there was a Sanskrit word which could be translated in kind of a neutral way, like in line with kind of renunciation, Brahma Gyan, and personal understanding. But Srila Maharaj was very much leaning it towards a more devotional interpretation. And so our Guru Dev was saying how Guru Maharaj's Gita, it is pure bhakti, beginning, middle, and end, in his presentation. But then the other thing to mention is that our Bhagavad Gita, it was actually made by our Guru Dev. Not many people know that. It's published as Srila Maharaj's text, but it was actually primarily done by our Guru Dev. There was one occasion when he had some illness, so I don't remember the details, but he had to spend a few months in bed. I don't remember if it was an injury or an illness, but he had to spend a few months in bed. And so Srila Maharaj, our Param Guru Maharaj, told him, then while you're in bed, you can work on this. And so our Guru Dev worked on this translation from Sanskrit to Bengali. This is the Bengali edition. And then, of course, it was under Srila Maharaj's guidance, and he was checking his work and making some corrections and additions and so on. But the bulk of the work was actually done by our Guru Dev. So that's what I have to say in regards to that matter. And I think it's helpful for someone to read both. We do have a few comments here. Yeah, Radhana Rupini saying, yes, when Srila Prabhupada came to the West, no one knew anything. So yes, thorough is the word. That's a good word. His purports are very thorough. Some other nice comments in our group here. And then another point Ramananda Prabhu brought up, as we mentioned earlier, today is we have a number of special days today. Another very special point about today is that we're honoring the day of departure of Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj. And so it would be nice to say something about him. And he was a Babaji, like a real Babaji, in the sense that he was fully absorbed in his own bhajan, his devotional, mood and service, internal service to the Lord, and in a manner that was disregarding conventions of society. And so he was very eccentric, according to, general standards, and, was just completely aloof from general society, and would behave in ways that were completely incomprehensible, to the common person, and highly renounced, didn't accept disciples, perhaps, he accepted, but so he's also the person who gave initiation, who gave Diksha initiation to Srila Saraswati Thakur, but that was after repeated requests. It was something like 18 times that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and it was because Bhaktivinoda Thakur had instructed him to go to him for initiation. And remember, another interesting point is this is in an era, so we're talking about late 1800s, early 1900s. This is at a time when there were many false imitation Babajis, who were, it was like a trend, to as no doubt you'll see in any religion across the world, there is a trend of persons, following different practices, making a show in different ways, to make a living for themselves, or just to make a name for themselves, like for the sake of name and fame, for pratishta, and doing extreme televangelists in the 20th century. So yeah, you know, some of them just for the sake of name and fame, like some arrogance, you know, that they can do these extreme austerities, or they can chant so many thousands of holy names, you know, every day and so on. There were all sorts. Then there were others who would engage in you know, like sexual practices in the name of devotion and call themselves Babajis, and I mean all you know, imitating, you know, Radha, Krishna, Leela, and all kinds of things would go on. So there were many different Babajis, you know, or there were those who would show something in the front, but behind they're doing something completely different. Because, and this is one reason why Saraswati Thakur instituted the Sannyasa Ashram, the order of renunciation. This was one of the reasons why, because really Vaishnavism is very free and very natural, right? It's just based on a natural loving relationship with the Lord, and there's no special dress, no special social structure, nothing's required, right? But the problem is that's easily abused, right? In the name of free love, all kinds of things can go on. And so that was why, you know, Saraswati Thakur saw the need to introduce some structure, some formality, some you know, some order, right? And so the point is, there were very few, it was very few and far between, you know, for there to be a real Babaji, like genuine Babaji, you know, who was utterly absorbed in their devotional connection with the Lord. And Srila Saraswati Thakur made one very good point. Like, I don't want to imitate the Babajis. I want to worship the Babajis, right? And he said, I'm taking sannyas as that's a lower position. The sannyas order, the order of renunciation, that's something that's like a social position. That's part of the varnashrama system of India, part of the social religious system of India. So that's automatically, it has a mundane touch to it because it's part of the social order. So Saraswati Thakur made a very good point. I'm taking sannyas as a lower thing because I want to hold the dress of the Babajis above my head. They are higher than me. I'm not going to imitate them. I worship them. That was Saraswati Thakur's mood, right? And yes, I will drive a motor car in Vrindavan. And yes, I will use all the technology. And yes, we will wear fancy clothes. And yes, we will use wealth and opulence in the service of the Lord. And we will worship those who live a simple life of exclusive devotion as something higher above us, right? We're not going to imitate that. And he made this very nice comment. You see, this is one of the points like that we saw from Gurudev so much. It's an internal aspiration. We don't need to make a big show about it. And there was this one, we don't need to imitate, we don't need to make a big show. And there was this other really, really wonderful comment Saraswati Thakur made on one occasion. It was at that time when he went in, he shocked everyone, horrified everyone by going into Vrindavan in a fancy motor car. And he said, what could be better than to be riding in a motor car in like ostensibly riding a great motor car in Vrindavan, while in the core of one's heart desiring to roll in the dust of Vrindavan, right? Isn't that better, you know, than to imitate the Babajis and, you know, live under trees and so on, imitate that? You know, or we accept the paraphernalia of this world and we live with the world, but in our heart, we're aspiring for something else. We're aspiring for that very simple approach, right? So Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, he was recognized, you know, by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as one of the very few authentic Babajis of that era. And he sent his son, Saraswati Thakur, to him for initiation. But he was so much of an authentic Babaji that he didn't want to accept disciples. This was part of the problem. And he refused Saraswati Thakur in the beginning. And Saraswati Thakur kept asking him, and then on one occasion, Gaura Kishor said, oh, well, let me ask, I have to ask Mahaprabhu. for permission. Come back another time. And so sometime later, Saraswati Thakur comes back again, and Gaura Kishor tells him, "Oh, I forgot. I forgot to ask Mahaprabhu. So come back another time." And so it went on like this, like it was about 18 times. And Saraswati Thakur, he wrote some description of this. And in his humility, he described how this was it was a very humbling experience, because we have to understand, like Saraswati Thakur, he was part of like this elite society. Like his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was a renowned person in society. He was, he was a Bengali gentleman working as a magistrate in the British government. That was huge. That was a huge thing. He was respected and honored by the British government. That was for him to honor a Bengali like that was a very big thing. And he was close friends with the brother of Rabindranath Tagore, the famous Nobel Prize winning poet, Rabindranath Tagore. His brother was like best friends. Vijendranath was like best friends with Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was part of this like elite society. And then his son, Saraswati Thakur, is brilliant young man. He's, has so many, certificates of appreciation, honor from different societies. And he, like Saraswati Thakur was the kind of person who many gurus wanted as their disciple, because having him as their disciple would give them some name and fame. Right. This is the kind of person Saraswati Thakur was. There were persons who wanted him as their disciple. But then he goes to Gaura Kishor. And who's Gaura Kishor? Gaura Kishor was illiterate. He could not even write his own name. He was completely illiterate by mundane estimation. And Saraswati Thakur made one comment about him that, he could not even write his own name, but all spiritual knowledge was contained in one of his toenails. Saraswati Thakur said that about Gaura Kishor. So here's Saraswati Thakur, right, coming as this bright young man, celebrated young man in the elite society of Bengal. And he's being rejected by this simple, illiterate, vagabond type Babaji, right? Say, oh no, I'm not interested. Like, leave me in peace, right? And so Saraswati Thakur, he wrote this description of these events and how it threw him into this like kind of existential examination, and saying, like, I realized that all my learning and all my good qualifications drawn from this world, they were useless. Like all my knowledge, all my scholarship, all my brilliance, all my qualifications, they were useless. In front of this pure devotee, they were meaningless in front of him. And so, eventually, Gaura Kishor accepted him. And I perhaps he had a couple other disciples, but it would have been very, very, very few. And he, for the most part, he liked to practice in a very isolated way. One time, and he would carry out his bhajan in all kinds of extreme environments. Like sometimes he would live underneath an upturned boat on the banks of the Ganges. There was one famous occasion he cleaned out a public toilet, and he was staying there for some time. And he made some comment like he preferred the stench, of the toilet, rather than having to hear the stench of, persons' mundane talk and mundane thoughts. He preferred that. He like specially requested this, these like wealthy people, like, oh, I'd like to stay in this latrine. And, they were horrified, but he insisted, no, this is what I want. They want to know what seva they can do. I want to stay here. And he stayed there for some time in these public bathrooms. All kinds of extreme things like that. We hear he'd like sometimes he'd drink water from a human skull. He he would sometimes take rice. He'd like wouldn't cook the rice. He'd like soak the rice, raw rice, for a few days and then eat that. You know, there was this chili sabji, like just chilies, like just burning hot chilies that he would eat sometimes. And they used to make that in the mat. Sometimes, not when I was there that I noticed, but I heard Gurudev mention that they would sometimes make this special just chili sabji, like in honor of him. And there are a few famous stories about him too. Gaura Kishor. Our Gurudev always liked to tell. There was one occasion, many of you are probably familiar with, because like people could recognize he had some authenticity. He naturally attracted people. People would hear about his glories and come and try to hear from him and try to serve him in different ways. And he was mostly quite indifferent, but sometimes he might accept or give some save or give some instruction according to what he felt was authentic. But on one occasion there was someone who he was like a Bhagavatam reciter. This is like a whole thing, and it's a profession in India. Like people will recite, people will pay. They do this, they call it Bhagavat Saptaha, like in the course of a week, they'll read the whole Bhagavatam, something like that. And anyway, there was one man like this, and he wanted to have Gaura Kishor in his audience, so that like for his own prestige, right? He could say, or Gaura Kishor, like he listened to my recitation, right? And so he tried a few times going to Gaura Kishor, oh, will you hear my recitation of Bhagavatam? And Gaura Kishor just ignored him. And finally, this man, he was so pushy, he came and set up like right in front of Gaura Kishor's little bhajan kutir, little residence he was staying in, some little hut or something at that time. And he just like read the Bhagavatam, right? And then finally he finished and he left. And then after he left, Gaura Kishor told his servitor, bring some cow dung and cleanse this place. Right? And cow dung traditionally is considered very purifying, right? And used in cleaning, cleansing, purification. And his servitor was very puzzled and said, what do you mean? Bhagavatam was just recited. Surely that's the most purifying vibration. And Gaura Kishor said to him, you heard Bhagavatam? He said, I only heard taka, 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 taka. It means money, 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 money. That's all I heard. That was his nature, like didn't beat around the bush, just straight to the point. And another story our Gurudev liked to tell was there was one Babaji, or imitation Babaji, some man who came in and set up his little bhajan kutir right next to Gaura Kishor. And he started that, he was like imitating Gaura Kishor's practices, with his chanting and showing symptoms of ecstasy and all these things. And then after some days, some persons, they asked Gaura Kishor, what do you think about this man? What's he about? Is he genuine? What do you think? And Gaura Kishor told them, he said, if a woman goes into a labor room and she starts making some noises, will a baby come out? There are some prior, there are some prior events that are required, before the baby can come. So, we have to enter into the proper, cultivation, the proper conception, the proper practice, and then something may come, but we don't imitate the end result. Right. So that this was Kishor Das Babaji's mood. And he was good friends with Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You know, they would meet together sometimes, and we hear he would come to when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was staying at that his residence in Godrumadweep and Navadweep, Swananda Sukada Kunj, he would go and they would hear Bhagavatam and that. So they had some closeness and friendship like that. And that's all that comes to mind right now. I don't know if anyone else can remember some stories about Kishor they'd like to share. Maybe Suvasini Didi is here. Suvasini Didi, do you want to share any more stories? And by the way, welcome. Narottam Prabhu joined, Brajabala's joined, Murari's joined us. Very cool. And Suvasini Didi, anything else you want to share about Kishor?
I think most of the things what you said, that's all I remember. But one other thing is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he told him that, you know, don't go to Calcutta, you know, stay here, you know, do your bhajan here, you know. And, you know, this is a place of Maya. Calcutta is a place of Maya, you know, don't go there, isn't it? That's one. And then Gaura, Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, by your, you know, mercy, you know, something, he said, exact words, I don't remember. I can liberate, by your grace, I can liberate thousands of Calcutta, you know. What you have, you know, what mercy you're giving, I can liberate by your grace. I can do that, you know. So
yes, yes, that's a very nice remembrance. Yes, Gurudev mentioned that. Yeah, that was, you know, it's kind of funny, right? Because, you know, Kishor, he had this, you know, like the mood that a Babaji generally would have, like, you know, they're wanting to focus exclusively on their internal connection with the Lord. But Saraswati Thakur had the opposite nature, you know, Goshtyanandi, right? Sometimes it's referred, you know, he's wanting to preach and on a wide scale, and so very different nature, right? And our Gurudev said when he was telling that story, like he said, he actually, our Gurudev said Saraswati Thakur actually mentioned in one place, like he took that instruction in the opposite way. And he said in one place, my guru ordered me to go to Calcutta. because he took it like, oh, if you know, Calcutta is the place of the most Maya, the most illusion. So if you want to conquer Maya, then you have to go there, right? And if you want to save the most people, then you have to go there, right? And then Srila Maharaj also compared, in this regard, he compared Saraswati Thakur to Napoleon, right? Napoleon Bonaparte, who had that strategy of attacking the strongest point of the enemy, and then the whole thing will topple, right? Rather than inching your way up from the weaker to the stronger, right? So that was Saraswati Thakur's, you know, he had this very bold approach, right? So, oh, Calcutta, you say? That's the place of Maya. All right. I'm going. So different, you know, very different natures of the Vaishnavas. What else? Trying to remember other Kishor pastimes. There are many. Those are the main ones that we heard from Gurudev, but there are many. And sometimes I get mixed up because there's you know, we also hear pastimes about Jagannath. There are a few Babajis, you know, who were like in this relatively modern era who were recognized by our gurus. There's Gaura Kiśor Das Babaji, there's Jagannath Das Babaji, and then there's also Vamshi Das Babaji. And they all have this nature of being like quite eccentric, very kind of isolated, and they're focused on their connection with the Lord. And it's very inspirational to hear their pastimes, because they show this. See, our problem, like our blessing, but also our problem, is that we're following the principle of Yukta Vairagya. Right? Yukta Vairagya means that Yukta Vairagya gives as an excuse, to, mix with the mundane energy and to live comfortable lives, and so on. And the idea of Yukta Vairagya is really the real principle of Krishna consciousness, that we don't renounce anything, but we utilize everything, right, in the service of the Lord. That's the real principle of devotion. And that's what Saraswati Thakur established, and that's how we're trying to continue our lives. But at the same time, it makes it easy to just get too comfortable, right? And forget that, we're doing this all in a spirit of dedication and service and so on. And so it's very inspiring sometimes to hear these examples of these Babajis who live these extreme lives of renunciation, completely detached and aloof from anything of this mundane world, and just like exclusively focused on their life of devotion to the Lord. So it's and what we're trying to do is internally cultivate some shadow of that, right, while we're also interacting with the environment, with the mundane environment, and trying to connect everything with the service of the Lord. So, yeah. Ramananda Prabhu, did you have a story you wanted to share, Gaura Kiśor Das Babaji?
Yeah, I heard actually Gurudev tell that when Gaura Kishor Das Babaji used to pass by and little kids used to throw rocks at him. So he said, I will complain to Mother Yashoda. I remember.
Yeah, that's a very nice that's a very nice story. Thanks for reminding us of that.
You will.
Yeah, this is an incident. Śrīla Maharaj tells this story too, and that Gaura Kiśor, and because as I mentioned, he looks something like a vagabond, right? He's very unkempt, wild look, wild hair, dirty, barely any clothes, and what's there is very dirty and torn. And so there was one occasion some village boys were following him, throwing stones at him and calling him names. But Gaura Kishor's vision was so broad that he directly connected it with Krishna. And he called out to Krishna, saying, "Oh Krishna, if you don't stop this nonsense, I'm going to complain to Mother Jashoda about you." He was directly seeing, that this was coming from Krishna, teasing him, giving him trouble. And so he's telling Krishna, "Oh, I will complain to your mother. I will complain to Mother Jashoda about you. Stop this." In a very direct way, not in some abstract theoretical way. Oh, everything's coming from Krishna. But his faith was so firm and so advanced that he's directly seeing, oh, this is coming from God. So yes, that is Gaura Kiśor Das Babaji. And there are many stories of wealthy people coming, and there were some local kings who came, and there was one time there was some local king who wanted him to come and stay with him, and I wanted to serve him and all this luxury, and he was very. There was one incident. There was one time I'm remembering now. There was some person like this. It was some very wealthy person or some local Raja king, and he invited him to come and stay with him, and so he could hear from him and serve him. And Gaura Kishor told him, "It would be better if you will stay with me here." You will come and live with me here and follow my lifestyle here. That will be better, both of us. And there's another incident. I think it was, oh yeah, there was another funny incident too. I'm remembering now. Because you know, in the Vedic culture, there's this tradition that you know, the woman, right, she will cook for her husband, and the husband will, and then she won't eat until after the husband eats, right? And she'll take what's left, right? And so there was one time when Gorky, well, first of all, like for Kiśor, marriage wasn't something he was so into, right? There was another occasion, I'm pretty sure it was Kiśor, when like he was told someone was getting married, and he went and like, he was so sad, he went and like hid for 3 days or something like that, you know. And then, but then this other time, someone told him this couple told him they're getting married, and he told the husband, you will see that your wife is a servant of Krishna. You will cook for her, and then you will take her remnants. Yeah, very, very funny, very funny. This is Gorky showed us Babaji. All right. Well, yeah, shaking things up. Yeah. Well, we still have 10 minutes left. I don't know what we should do. If we should go to Bhagavad Gita. Maybe I will Chintamani saying Gita. You know, I actually wanted to, what I wanted to do today, as I mentioned, was go through this chapter of revealed truth. And we could maybe just briefly have an overview of it. This is chapter 10 of revealed truth which was made from the talks of our Gurudev, Śrīla Bhakti-Sundar Govinda Maharaj. And wait, what happened here? What happened? Maximize the screen and lost it. And it's a very nice chapter where our Gurudev is kind of giving a summary of Bhagavad Gita. And see, there's this very interesting point that Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes. And it's mentioned in one of the purports in our Bhagavad Gita. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so like from one perspective, you can say Bhagavad Gita is describing different yogas, right? Different paths by which one may approach the Lord, attain the Lord, realize the self, and so on. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave this very interesting angle that actually Bhagavad Gita is describing one yoga. And that is buddhi-yoga. But then there's a development, and there are stages in the evolution of this buddhi-yoga. And Śrīla Maharaj, in one place, he makes this very interesting point, saying that actually Śrīla Maharaj says buddhi-yoga is higher than bhakti-yoga. And this is something that actually I think is important for everyone to understand, that bhakti yoga, like we use the term bhakti yoga because it's a helpful term, and it's a point of reference for persons who don't know what we're about. Everyone knows the word yoga. But bhakti, Krishna consciousness is actually higher than bhakti yoga, strictly speaking. So there's one place where Śrīla Maharaj discusses, because as soon as you use the word yoga, then you're talking about some particular practices, right? And modes of behavior and some regulated practice. It's not exactly describing like the automatic flow of the heart towards the Lord, right? Bhakti yoga, like strictly speaking, means practices of devotion, right? That help connect us with the Lord. So it's almost more like a stage rather than reflecting the nature of the soul in its fully evolved state, right? And another thing is that bhakti yoga can refer, bhakti, there's lots of different types of bhakti, right? And there are many deities to whom bhakti is offered, right? So bhakti yoga is a very broad term. And it can refer to many different conceptions, actually. So, we tend to use that word. I mean, it's a helpful word, like when we're presenting things to persons who don't have any acquaintance with these teachings. But we do want to have an internal understanding that, bhakti yoga isn't completely describing, what we are and what our teachings are, right? It's a very broad term. So there's one place where Śrīla Maharaj is saying that, that buddhi-yoga is describing, the word buddhi means something like intelligence, right? It's referring to this, but it's more than that, more than just the mundane intelligence. It's like referring to our consciousness in a broader way. And so this term buddhi-yoga, it's referring to like the fullest expression of our consciousness in connection with Krishna. And so perfect buddhi yoga is bhakti yoga. And then so the explanation Bhakti Thakur gives is that when buddhi yoga is limited by the ideals, like we can think of buddhi yoga as like the development of the consciousness, and when the consciousness, the approach to the Lord is limited by the ideals of karma action, then it's known as karma yoga, right? When it's limited by the ideals of Ashtanga yoga, then it is known as Ashtanga yoga. And when it is, and then the fullest expression of buddhi yoga, that is bhakti yoga, the heart going towards the Lord. So it's an interesting angle on Bhagavad Gita, like seeing that there's one, not just that, there's this yoga, that yoga, but actually there's one yoga that's developing and, in different stages, right? And then bhakti yoga is expressing the perfection of that. So we can maybe read a little bit from here. Our Gurudev is explaining this point. I love this line here. In the early portion of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that yoga means practices for progress in life, practices for sympathetic and harmonious dealings with nature. Right? This is part of the whole foundation of what this is, right? That of what yoga is, and what our practicing life is about, that we're not also part of what this Yukta Vairagya that I was just mentioning is about, right? That we're not just denying our mundane nature. This isn't what Bhagavad Gita is advising at all, but we harmonize with our mundane nature, right? Moving towards our spiritual ideal, but not in such a way that's completely denying or repressing our mundane nature, but with some harmony. So Krishna begins his explanation of yoga by giving inspiration to everyone to avoid selfish action and instead take up yogas. And this is karma yoga. You are an eternal jiva soul. You have natural capacity for thinking, feeling, and willing. You cannot avoid those aspects of your existence. If you use your natural conscious property to exploit the material nature, you will not be fulfilled. You will be a miser destined to suffer helplessly. By your nature, you are always active, so do something positive. Otherwise, you will always be the cause of harm to yourself and others. And so, again, it's not about repression, right? But try to express your conscious nature, try to express your desires in a positive way. In this verse, so this phrase is here, buddhi-yoga, this verse in chapter 2, buddhi-yoga, Dhananjaya. In this verse, Krishna encourages everyone to take up buddhi-yoga, the yoga of wisdom. Buddhi-yoga is the first form of yoga mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and buddhi-yoga is the basis of all the forms of yoga, Krishna goes on to describe. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, hatha yoga, dhyana yoga, vyasa yoga, bhakti yoga, and so on. Krishna explains, buddhi yukto jahati ha ube sukrita diskrite tasma yogaya vidyasva yoga karma suposhanam. A wise person engaged in buddhi yoga abstains from both good and bad actions in this world and simply engages in yoga, because yoga karma suposhanam. Yoga is the art of action. Right? How to, act in the world, be in the world, but not be of the world, right? This is yoga. It is an art. This is a yoga karma suposhanam. This is a well-known phrase. The art of yoga. Buddhi yoga is a very wide idea. It is the basis of yoga itself, and all other forms of yoga are expressions of Buddhi yoga. When Arjuna first asked Krishna how to practice Buddhi yoga, Krishna begins by giving him advice about karma yoga, highest activity. And then there's this famous verse here, karma nivadipadas. This is a very helpful verse for those of you who are keeping notes on key verses. And we are going to go through everything again. I think maybe we'll start next week again. So this is one of those key verses. It's kind of like one of the principal, or the principal verse on karma yoga, outlining this karma yoga. 247. Krishna explains that the karma yogi has the right to perform his prescribed duty, but not to enjoy the fruits of his action. The karma yogi should not be motivated to do his duty because of the fruits it produces. And he should not be inclined to give up action. Rather, he should be, this is very nice, he should be motivated by the desire to be in proper harmony with the environment and its controller. It's a very nice way. And so I'm just going to look at a little bit. And this chapter is really nice. Like, some of you may want to look at this in your own time, because Gurudev's in a concise way. He's describing the different points of development, the main points of development in Gita, where there's like a shift from this yoga to that yoga. So from after karma yoga, then so what's after karma yoga? Jnana yoga, right? From action, knowledge to knowledge. Sarvam, and this is the key phrase in this transition point. Chapter 4, verse 33. Sarvam karma kilam karta jnana parisamaptate. The perfection of highest activity, karma yoga, is its culmination in transcendental knowledge. So through selfless, pious action, spiritual knowledge will arise. Through karma yoga, one is enlightened and receives proper knowledge. Without practicing karma yoga, that is, engaging in sacrifice and service, transcendental knowledge will not actually appear in the heart. But when someone offers themselves properly and opens their heart, when they are enlightened and can practice jnana yoga, yoga of knowledge. Through jnana yoga, this is so nice. Gurudev is very clearly describing the development of Gita. Then so the shift from karma yoga to jnana yoga. Through jnana yoga, one understands the entangling nature of material existence and then pursues liberation from samsara, the cycle of birth and death, and realization of Brahman, the absolute. Krishna advises persons who become firmly established in knowledge and the practice of jnana yoga to practice meditation through Ashtanga yoga, which may also be referred to as jnana yoga. Jnana means meditation. When one practices Ashtanga yoga, one meditates, striving to remove one's consciousness from the outside world and attain to a vision of the Supreme Soul. This is Paramatma, who is subtly present everywhere throughout existence. In this way, Krishna explains how selfless action, karma yoga, leads to the yogas of knowledge, renunciation, and meditation. After describing these processes, Krishna presents his final teaching about yoga practice. And this is another key verse. Gurudev is also citing like all these key verses. Tapasvi yogi, yogi, jnana yogi. A yogi is superior to persons engaged in physical austerities and drive renunciation, superior to persons of knowledge, jnanas, and superior to persons of mundane action. Therefore, one should be a yogi. The best of all yogis is the devotee, the bhakti yogi, who holds me within his heart with full faith and always engages in my service. He is most intimately united with me. Here, Krishna clearly expresses through direct comparison that the bhakti yogi is the highest type of yogi. Within Bhagavad Gita, see, it's, this is why we can never accept this conclusion that everything is one, because it's very clearly, it's clear as day in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is very clearly saying there is a gradation, there are levels. I appreciate everyone, I love everyone, but there is a gradation. It is really just complete foolishness to say otherwise. It is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita. Within Bhagavad Gita, gradual levels of development in spiritual practice and realization are explained. Krishna explains that yoga is one, but that there is a development within yoga. He explains that yoga, that is buddhi-yoga, develops in different forms, beginning with karma yoga, and goes up past jnana yoga and ashtanga yoga to bhakti yoga. Because it is so accommodating and broad in its discussion, Srimad Bhagavad Gita explains not only its primary subject, bhakti yoga, but also explains all the levels of realization that lead to bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and so on. This is done through the idea of buddhi-yoga. In this way, Krishna praises karma yoga, jnana yoga, and ashtanga yoga, but praises bhakti yoga the most. Bhakti yoga is what is truly necessary for all jiva souls eternally. The other yogas are only necessary for conditioned souls according to their relative stages of advancement. A primary school student will not understand the lessons taught in secondary school. Secondary school student will not understand the lessons taught in the PhD program. Krishna explained different stages of development in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and in that way they're all important. But unless a yogi advances through the stages of yoga practice mentioned up to bhakti yoga, he will not attain the ultimate goal of all yoga. Each form of yoga practice has a specific destination. The destination of karma yoga is Svarga Loka, heaven. Destination of jnana yoga is Brahman, the non-differentiated spiritual plane. Hatha yoga, Paramatma Tattva, vision of the Supreme Soul within all things. All the forms of yoga practice do not lead to the same destination, and all the destinations are not the same. I'm going to share this. This is actually really nice to read before we dive into Gita again, so I feel like we can go into it with some greater perspective. I'm already kind of excited to go back to it and trace out these different points of development. I'm gonna, I think I will close for today. I'll share, for those of you who don't have access to a copy of Revealed Truth, I'll share this link in our chat, and perhaps you might want to take a look at that before we have our meeting next week. Okay. Does anyone want to It's been such a nice meeting. We covered quite a range of topics. Does anyone want to share any thoughts before we close for today? And a special welcome to Murari. I think he's joining for the first time. Is this our British Murari? Great to have you with us. Okay, well, then maybe we'll close for today. And Suvasni Didi, anything you'd like to share before we end?
No, Didina, actually, what you said, that's very good, actually, to go through that chapter. I think that is really good, to give a good perspective on, the different yoga. And I think it's a very, very good idea to do that.
Yeah, I feel excited to like go back to Gita with like this first angle that Gurudev's giving here, and then we can trace that out.
Yeah.
That would be really nice.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you for joining, Suvasni. It's always so good to have you. Murari's driving, but listen. All right, then we'll close for today. Vanchakalpa Tribhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo. Jai Śrīla Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Bhakti Daksha Chudhardev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Śrīla Bhakti Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bodhi Samu's Bodhi Sincere Seekers Ki Jai. Shri Hari Ki Jai. Itai Gorpan. Hari
Vishaka Didi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.